One thing that hasn't come out successfully is why did you start this particular podcast?
To be honest, I haven't shared this much with anyone, but I lost my wife in December 2023, and we had a very, very lovely relationship where both of us were like best friends. Incidentally, what happened is that my mom is a part of this Havan kitty. They have this lady Pandit who comes and, does the Havan. She explained to me very well that you have two choices. One, you go the destructive path, or then you do something creative. And that's where the whole podcast idea came about. Even when we were at 0 subscribers, तो बड़े-बड़े लोगों को जो हमने कांटेक्ट किया, किसी ने मना नहीं किया, वो सब आए.
So many deaths or such tragic emotional incidents perhaps shut you down emotionally?
Yeah, sort of. For example, a lot of people don't understand how much time it takes to sort of recover from a death.
When these people said it like आप time heal कर देगा, आप करते रहो, did you perhaps not find people who genuinely meant well for you?
The thing that I think is a fallacy is that people always come and say that time is the healer, time will heal, time will heal. I don't think time heals. I think time makes things worse. There was a moment when I used to think that nobody should love anyone so much. Then when one of those people goes away, then it's really, really bad for the other person who's left behind. Your wife passed away, tum to itna, you're just 47. Your kids are small. तुम कैसे करेगा इनको हॉस्टल में डाल दो दोनों को. So I was like, मैं क्यों डालूं उनको हॉस्टल में? I would retaliate. I would say that मेरे को भगवान ने दिमाग दिया है जो चल रहा है. मेरे 2 हाथ 2 पाँव हैं. मैं मेहनती हूँ. मैं सब कर लूँगा अपने आप. I'll become their mother also.
By the way, I'm very surprised by people saying such very insensitive things to you. I think in India, there are only a handful of licensed therapists who can deal with grief.
Nowadays, you open Instagram, everyone is a model. Even the dogs are models. Everyone is having a great life. Everyone is like, wow. That sort of puts you in that direction that सबके तो मौज है, मेरी लगी पड़ी है यहाँ, मैं रो रहा हूँ कमरे में बैठ के.
और बहुत सारे ऐसे incidents आए where my sister is proven to be the strongest.
Every time I go back to our ancient culture and I read, women in India are Shakti. As simple as that. उनकी जो the threshold level that they have of bearing pain is far greater than men. Namaste and welcome to this episode of the OddCast Show. Today is a very, very special episode because, the Father-Son podcast is, gaining momentum now. And today we are going to discuss with Vinamre of Dostcast, who's been very, very pleasant enough to come down to us and, very helpful to us. He's like mentoring us sort of in a way. And I'm very happy that he's going to curate this episode for us and he's going to ask us why we started this podcast. So I'm going to hand over the questioning to Vinamre now, and we are going to be on the receiving end today.
Yep.
So let's go for it.
Great. So very excited to do this. I guess to start off, we can do Hindi, English both, right?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
for sure.
We can do Haryanvi also.
We've been speaking on the phone and we've been talking over video calls for a while. And one thing that came up is, since this podcast is very rightly so gaining momentum, and you've been having stellar conversations as a unique duo. It's never happened that a father and son do a podcast where instead of talking to each other and talk about their relationship, they instead talk to a third person who happens to be sometimes an eminent historian, other times a commentator, other times a celebrity or a politician. You had a whole gamut of people on your show sitting right where I'm sitting and having conversations with them. But as we were discussing, one thing that hasn't come out successfully is the genesis of this podcast and who you are as people, right? That is the heart of the podcast is missing. So obviously I know the reason. And there are a million podcasts in the world. Why did you start this particular podcast?
So to be honest, I haven't shared this much with anyone, but I lost my wife in December 2023 and we had a very, very lovely relationship where both of us were like best friends. From day one, we just connected, hit it off. We had 22 years of just bliss. And, we never had any major arguments or fallouts. We were always in love with each other. And she was a very devoted lady to me and my family. Like, she used to cut my nails every week. She was extremely devoted, extremely loving and extremely divine in such a way that she poured a lot of effort and energy into, raising me as a man and also raising these two beautiful children that I have into, divine souls and divine beings. Her loss left us all with such a big gap that we didn't understand what hit us. And she was very healthy and fit and, very, very athletic. And she never had any health issues. But one fine day, she was just sitting and doing yoga and laughing and cracking a joke. Probably that joke was on me. And I was just around the corner, in the same room. And her eyes just closed and her mouth just stopped talking and she just slipped into a coma instantly. This guy was studying in the US then, and I immediately called him the next day and told him that, you need to come back. Mom is a little unwell and she's a little serious. Of course, I lied to him. I didn't tell him what has happened. I just told him that Mama had a fall and she was unconscious. And when she came about, वो तुम्हारे लिए पूछ रही थी कि, बेटा कहाँ है? तो तुम एक बार आ जाओ मिलने. And then it just became worse that she just stayed in that coma for 8 days and then just passed away. ये सब होने के बाद जो है ये आ गया था. फिर हम लोग ने जो है सारी विधियां की वगैरह वगैरह. फिर फेब में couple of months later, when we were able to even talk to each other, like, the first 2 months were just misery. It was just like being in hell. हम लोग बस दिन भर उठते हैं, रोते हैं, सोते हैं, नींद नहीं आती. एक घंटा सो रहे हैं दिन में, किसी को नींद नहीं आती थी. It was that bad. तो ये फेब में आया मेरे पास और बोला कि पापा, हम क्यों सफर कर रहे हैं इतना? Why are we suffering so much? My mother passed away, your wife passed away. Why are we suffering so much? So I told him that देखो तुम यू डोंट कॉल योर सेल्फ विक्टिम मत बोलो तुम अपने आप को, क्योंकि जो भी आता है इस दुनिया में धरती में कहीं ना कहीं सफर करता ही है. बी इट फाइनेंशियल सफरिंग, बी इट हेल्थ, पीपल हैव हेल्थ इश्यूज ऑल देयर लाइव्स. देयर आर पीपल हु हैव वेजिटेबल्स. आई टोल्ड हिम तुम चौक पे जाएगा तो तुम बिना माँ बाप के बच्चे भी पलते हैं रोड पे. most people have financial misgivings throughout their lives. So there are so many issues that people suffer from. And you're not the only one. So he understood, he's a mature kid and he understood that, okay, I'm not the only one suffering here. Everyone around me suffers in some way or the other. For some, it's periodic. For some, it's lifelong. Then after that, his next question was very logical and legitimate, where he said that, why doesn't our society, especially our education system, peer network, etc., why don't they train us or, brief us or, हम लोग को सक्षम कैसे बने? How do we bear this suffering? How do we deal with this? So I just, that time, I didn't have a real genuine answer because, even we were never taught how to deal with this, while growing up. And part of it, I think, comes that from the fact that, we have been in this so-called modern education system in India. And I told him that, why don't you do a little bit of research on the word Gurukul? And he was very intrigued by that. He said, what's that? What does it mean, etc. I said, you research on it. So इसने कुछ किताबें मंगाई, 2-3 हफ्ता, 1 महीना, he spent time on, researching the word Gurukul. And then he came back to me after a month and he said, Papa, I found my answer. So I said, what's the answer? So he said that the Gurukul system was so much far superior because our ancestors knew that whoever comes on this planet is going to suffer. They had introduced a system where they also, the Guru Shishya Parampara में जो गुरु है वो आपका spiritual quotient भी जगाता है. Apart from your IQ, your EQ, and even your physical quotient of keeping you so physically fit, where you chop the wood in the forest, make your own place of stay, etc., and all that, and live there for so long. That makes a person very saksham, where he can bear with a lot of difficulties and get through all those obstacles that life throws at you, because life is a test at the end of the day. So he got that answer. Then finally he said that, Papa, why doesn't anyone talk about such odd topics openly? And that's where we came out with a concept. And actually we had not even reached that level, but, then we started talking about, how to talk about it. And I told him that, look, you're the younger one, you're just 19, I'm, 48, I'm, almost on the other side of the hill. And I'm not very tech savvy, etc. and all that, but you should figure out a way to, how do you talk about these kind of topics? So then he came up with the idea of starting a podcast. And then we attended some workshop in Pune, which he signed us up for. It was a day-long workshop where, we went and understood the do's and don'ts of, starting your own podcast and, podcasting. For me, it was something totally new because I've been a traditional businessman. The typical old school, जैसे ही पढ़ाई खत्म हुई तो उसके बाद काम पे लग जाओ फैमिली बिजनेस में. जैसे 2-3 years में मैच्योरिटी थोड़ी सी आ जाती है, देन शादी कर लो, बच्चे पैदा कर लो. That was my journey. Nowadays, kids have got thousands of options available to them. So he came up with this idea of let's do a podcast. Let's do a father-son podcast. So then I said, I loved the idea. I said, great, we would love to talk about stuff. And then he said, what should we name it? So I said, since you already used the word that, odd topics, let's call it the OddCast. And then we finally fine-tuned it to the OddCast Show. And just got going immediately. We scouted for a good agency to, incubate us in terms of, just grooming us in terms of, how to talk to the guests, etc. Because we are not from a media background, we're just
Right.
normal people, from a business background. And we got going. And luckily, by grace of God, and again, I would attribute this whole thing to my ancestors' blessings, especially my wife's blessings, where doors started opening for us. And whoever we spoke to said, "Hey, I love the idea, I'll come on the show." Even when we were at 0 subscribers, जब हम 0 subscribers पे भी थे, तो बड़े बड़े लोगों को जो हमने कांटेक्ट किया, किसी ने मना नहीं किया हमको, वो सब आए, सब ने हमको अपना समय दिया, बहुत अच्छी तरह हमको समझाया, जो भी टॉपिक पे हमने बात किया उनसे. And we've had some very odd topics. We've talked about legalization of marijuana in India. We've talked about, the concept of tattoos, the history of tattoos in India. We've talked about spirituality. And in the whole process, we have actually learned so much, from these people. And what mostly it has done is that it's alleviated us from our grief. जो वो एक माहौल था घर में, कि बस दिन भर जो है, मतलब वो वही यादें आ रही है, वही मतलब बिछड़ गए हम लोग, कि अब क्या होगा, नाउ व्हाट नेक्स्ट, जिंदगी खत्म हो गई, अब क्या करें. And incidentally, what happened is that my mom is a part of this Havan kitty. Normally, ladies have these kitty parties, but she's part of this Havan kitty where they do a Havan every month at someone's house. And in March, it was at our place. And this lady Pandit, they have this lady Pandit who comes and, does the Havan. And she told me, देखो बेटा, तुम्हारे साथ जो भी हुआ है, you've lost your wife at a very young age. अभी जो है, समाज के लिए आप एक example बनो. She explained to me very well that you have two choices. One, you go the destructive path. You can go into, alcoholism, you can go into gambling, you can go, into smoking a lot, you can ruin your health, your life, your family, your children, etc. And, you can start womanizing, you can start doing all that, or then you do something creative. And that's where the whole podcast idea came about. And I found that, we found that it's something so creative that we're doing. Let's get into it and see how it goes. And right now we are loving it because we always were best friends. But now, the bond has become more. And, now it actually feels like, more than my son, I'm doing this podcast with my best friend. So that's the whole journey here so far. And it's been great.
For you, Suvaid, I'm sure when your mom passed away, since, despite the fact that life partners are also very close, they ultimately end up choosing each other. But a child is born to a mother, so that relationship is a slightly more close. Like, I can tell you for a fact that my mom loves me more than she loves my father. It's because I'm her kid, like I'm born from her. So in that regard, when you lost your mom, and perhaps at an early age, you had him for consoling, but when you saw him also struggling to find an answer, in that moment of despair, did you perhaps realize something about life that you hadn't before, about the nature of reality, about relationships, about perhaps seeing your father not as this all towering man who could take everything, but as a mere human being? And how did that change you, if at all?
Well, it wasn't too much of a drastic change, because honestly, I haven't told this to anyone yet. But ever since my mother passed away, I haven't even cried yet. People may think I'm crazy for that, but the background is that we have had so many deaths in the family now that it's a little bit difficult for me to process what has happened. For example, when I was just around 2 or 3 years old, I don't remember, I lost my sister, my real sister. Then when I was barely like 9 years old, I lost my grandfather, who suffered for a very long time because of pancreatic cancer. And then when I was in seventh standard, I had gone abroad for a month during school. And as soon as I came back, I heard that my only mama, my mother's real brother, suddenly got pneumonia out of nowhere. He was very healthy, very fit guy, no bad habits, nothing. Suddenly got pneumonia out of nowhere, and he passed away very soon after. And within just less than 2 weeks of that, I think my only first cousin brother, older brother, he had a brain aneurysm and passed away. And that was just before my exams, first term exams in seventh standard. So obviously, first of all, I wasn't there in school for a month because I was traveling. Then I got back, and then all this stuff started happening. So I didn't do well on these exams at all. Luckily, it was just seventh grade, so nothing much happened drastically. And then I was always bullied a lot in school because of that. They used to say, कि ये तो अभी आया है, वो fail हो गया exams में, ये सब वो सब. and they were aware of the situation at home. Then after that, I somehow picked myself up academically in the later year.
If you don't mind me asking, they would bully you because you had lost
Because
someone in family.
because I didn't do well in the exams.
But many people don't do well in the exams. Why would they bully you for that?
I don't know too much, to be honest, because honestly speaking, see, there are people who don't do well in the exams, but my grades were like really bad because of what happened. I didn't know anything.
Okay.
There were only some papers which I did well, but those were papers you didn't need to study for example, English
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. And also, I think they were kind of bullying me a lot for that also, because see, honestly, I don't blame them because they don't they don't know what it's like. I've never ever heard of a death in the immediate family of someone of any of my peers growing
Or
up.
so many.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And honestly speaking, a lot of them still have their grandparents around, which is great. I don't have my grandfather now. Then now, within just a couple of years, I just started college, and a week before my final exams, I got this call that I have to return, and I didn't know that it was that serious. But then I found out that a lot of friends of my dad are at the hospital.
Hmm.
Then I knew that there was something serious because I could hear them in the background on the phone. So then when I came, and then I understood that, I don't know what's going to happen because my brother also died because of the same reason, and he went instantly. She was still there in a coma for 8 days.
He also had a brain aneurysm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same, exactly same. And he was only 17.
Is that? Have you guys perhaps investigated if it runs genetically across?
So yeah, we checked it out and all that. The thing is that neuroscientists, neurophysicians, neurologists, etc., and all that, they all say at the end that brain aneurysms are so tricky. Firstly, they are very undetectable, and even if they're detected, they're very hard to treat.
I'm so sorry, but I don't know what a
And,
brain aneurysm
so brain
is.
aneurysm is sort of like, if I would say, I'm not a medical expert, but what I
Yeah.
understood is that it's the opposite of a clot.
Okay.
So clot basically clogs the artery that is carrying your blood vessel that's carrying blood. It stops the blood from flowing freely. Here, the opposite happens where the membrane of that particular vessel becomes so weak that one fine day it ruptures and the blood flows out.
Okay.
And then the blood mixes with,
Brain
other
fluid,
fluids in the body, where it's not supposed to be. And because of that, the repercussion is that within seconds, the brain stops sending signals to all the organs of the body. So, one by one, all your organs start shutting down or they start faltering. So that's what happened. And we, at the end, when after my wife passed away, I asked the doctor, that what is modern science? You're saying it's so hard to detect, then it's so hard to treat. Then after that, also, even after doing it, there's no guarantee, etc., that the person may come back as a vegetable for the rest of his life, his or her life. They can, be paralyzed forever. So what is modern science? So his answer was that, beta, modern science actually knows nothing about the brain. We know only 1% of the brain because the brain is more complex than the Brahman. So that was the only answer we got. We didn't get any, medical or scientific.
He was very uncertain about the thing because it's like, in very simple words, when people ask what it is, I just say it's like a heart attack, but for the brain, in a very simple manner, from what I've understood.
And you have heart aneurysms also.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite of heart attack is usually when it's clogged. So heart aneurysm is the opposite, where an artery will burst, and instead of supplying blood to the heart or circulating blood from the heart, it starts spilling out everywhere in the body, inside, and you don't see anything outside. You don't even come to know what's happening. So you have no clue what's happened to the person until you get to the hospital and they diagnose and they tell you, after doing some tests or scans. So it's a very, very rare, it's like a miracle situation, because when this happened with my wife also, within the first 10 minutes only, they saw her eyes and immediately saw that, the pupils are dilated and, fixated, and they deciphered that is something to do with the brain. They didn't know what then. And then within the next 20 minutes, from a CT scan, we were told that it's a brain aneurysm.
If there were other people in the family who also had this, what are the symptoms? That there are any symptoms? Are
So
these
the
healthy
symptoms
people?
we were told is that the person, so an aneurysm grows over the rupturing, the weakness of that membrane of that artery increases over a period of time. So they say that the signs are double vision, chronic migraines, etc. But in both these cases, both these people, they never had even a headache. Like, forget anything else. Like, my wife was like literally like an athlete. She never had any illness. She never took a crocin also in her life. She was so fit, no cold, cough, fever, headache, nothing ever. And in fact, the day this happened also, she was just sitting and laughing and doing yoga. So it was just suddenly as if, some, God came and he just unplugged or, just switched her off. That's it. That's what happened.
since I've been speaking with you since last year and before, I have found you to be very emotionally expressive and perhaps more lively. Maybe this is from your childhood. Maybe you've always been like this. But on the contrary, as his son, I found you less expressive and very stoic. And then your grandmother made the remark, I rarely see him laughing,
Yeah.
right? So do you feel like, I don't know, so I'm just gonna ask,
Sure, please.
Sure.
do you feel like perhaps you were surrounded by so many deaths in your family, or despite the fact that your parents gave you such a wonderful upbringing and made you travel so much and gave you the best of life, that so many deaths or such tragic emotional incidents perhaps shut you down emotionally in a way that maybe other kids your age are more lively? Did you ever think about that?
Yeah, sort of. For example, a lot of people don't understand how much time it takes to sort of recover from a death, because most of the problems that the others have, if I may, are salvageable because people are not dying. If a
Hmm.
person dies, then there's nothing you can do, to be
So if
honest.
someone has a debt, someone has like something else,
A relationship problem or something,
they can
or
come out of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
is what. Of course, there are different complex issues. I'm
Sure.
not saying that, but it's salvageable at the end of the day, no matter what. But they expect you to sort of come back to normal very
Snap
soon.
out of it. Yeah.
For example, there were so many people who told me that she passed away in December. My birthday is in May, and they were saying, "Why didn't you throw a party in May? Why don't you start coming out for dinner like just 2 months after that?" There were so many people when my mother was in the hospital who were coming and telling my dad, it's done now. There's nothing you can do. Just find another wife or something." So people don't understand.
See, people don't understand, but also, one thing that I think is a fallacy is that people always come and say that time is the healer, time will heal, time will heal. I don't think time heals. I think time makes things worse. The more like right now, the kind of relationship I had with my wife, I feel that the all the time spent apart from her actually makes me realize how blessed I was when she was around.
Hmm.
And I miss her more every day rather than missing her less. Like, people say time will heal, samay jo hai sab kuch theek kar dega. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's
Maybe
true.
enough time hasn't passed, perhaps.
I don't know. It's been 13, 14 months now, and I still feel miserable. My social life is down to zero. I don't go out of the house at all. In the evenings, I'm just at home. I used to be like a wild party animal before that. I used to go out, like we used to socialize a lot. We used to go for a lot of outings, trekking, hiking, this, that. Sab band ho gaya abhi, मन ही नहीं करता.
So to answer your question, basically, I would say, yeah, that has been a major contribution to my emotional self, and also, but not just the deaths; it's the repercussions of the deaths that have taken place. Like what I just told you about people having these unrealistic expectations all the time. Then the bullying that took place in seventh grade, because that was the worst time for me. Because that time, two deaths happened like back to back in different places. In one was my dad's side of the family, one was my mother's side of the family. So, and that was equally shaking up for both of them. And also after that, people didn't really like. We had this school thing in I went to ICC school. Over there, we had a board called NIOS. NIOS was a kind of curriculum for people who weren't that academically good, or who were athletes who don't have time to study. So it was for them, and basically up till we reached 8th standard, it was used as a tactic to scare kids.
Hmm.
You know कि अगर तुम पढ़ोगे नहीं तो तुमको
You're
NIOS में
like
डाल देंगे.
kind of academically backward,
Yeah.
retarded.
So
NIS में डाल देंगे.
Huh.
so that's the kind of things people start telling me in 7th standard. They're like, अरे तेरे फैमिली में 2 लोग मर गए, तू एग्जाम्स में फेल हो गया, तेरे को NIOS में जाएगा ना, तू तेरा लाइफ खत्म हो जाएगा ना. And that time school is your world, right? Because you don't have all this stuff
Right,
going
right,
on.
right.
So for you, that's the only thing going. So if you think if you fail in school, you fail in life.
Yeah, it's judge, jury, executioner. Everything is
Exactly.
school.
Exactly. So that's kind of one of the major contributions for my self.
But then tell me, by the way, I'm very surprised by people saying such very insensitive things to you. I also at the same time, I'm in a difficult spot because I understand that I want to give people the benefit of doubt, not in all the things they said to you, but I think in India there are only a handful of licensed therapists who can deal with grief or help the grieving, and our relatives and friends happen to be the worst because no one has that high end EQ. So sometimes people are well meaning, but the way they say it,
It comes
is
out in a
like
different way.
it comes out as totally different and insensitive to someone who is personally suffering,
For sure.
because they're only suffering from a tertiary standpoint from the outside. If your mother is someone's third cousin, the grief isn't as much.
For sure.
It's not even comparable, right?
Sure.
It's a small event or a blip in their head. It's not, their life doesn't stop. But when these people said it like आप time heal कर देगा, आप करते रहो, did you perhaps not find people who genuinely meant well for you?
See, there was a time, the first 2-3 months, where we were flooded with relatives from both sides of the family, like not only just from
Who
my
were staying
mom's
here
side,
probably also.
same place here only. My mom's side, dad's side, then my wife's side also. So many people would come, and they would all say something or the other, and some people can be nasty. Like some, like you said, some relatives, some close friends, etc. can be nasty. Like people would say something as insensitive as "Arey, your wife passed away. Tum to itna, you're just 47. Your kids are small. तुम कैसे करेगा इनको हॉस्टल में डाल दो दोनों को." So I was like, मैं क्यों डालूं उनको हॉस्टल में? I would retaliate. I would say that मेरे को भगवान ने दिमाग दिया है जो चल रहा है, मेरे 2 हाथ 2 पांव हैं, मैं मेहनती हूँ, मैं सब कर लूंगा अपने आप. I'll become their mother also. Why is it this thing? Why do I have to give up now? Why should I? So then at the end I realized that there's no point in talking to or retaliating to people, because I then took it under my stride and I explained to my children also that, look, whoever comes and says anything, take it with a pinch of salt, gulp it down, because let's assume that whoever is coming with a good intention. उतना बस मान लो कि गुड इंटेंशन के साथ आ रहा है, वो जो भी बोल के चले गया, रहने दो. कुछ भी बोलेंगे लोग आके कि ये कर लो, like while my wife was in a coma and she still had like a 1% miracle chance, there were people coming and telling me दूसरी शादी कर लो.
And these are people you've known all your life.
Yeah, I mean, so these are people from all walks of life, acquaintances, is that, but mainly it was like, very, very close friends and relatives who were coming and trying to give me this gyan. Ye kar lo, waise kar lo, abhi, start moving ahead, start thinking, jo ho gaya, so ho gaya. And I was like, look, we don't even know. We're still processing it. And it's the same even now. Even now, people come casually visit and they say, it's been 13 months. Why don't you get married? Why don't you get married? The children need a mother. And we've had a convo about it. Like I've had an open convo with my kids about it and all that. We're not ready for it. Nobody is.
It's actually the grieving who are supporting the ones who've come to support in the first place. कि जिस पे बीतती है वो दूसरे को बोल रहा होता है कि हाँ ठीक है, बल्कि दूसरे लोग चाहते हैं आके कि आप उन्हें कुछ सहानुभूति दो. It's almost like they're gonna come and say बहुत बुरा हो, और आप उनके सामने स्ट्रांग बन रहे होते हो, आप उनको बोल रहे होते हो नहीं हम संभाल लेंगे, हम देख लेंगे. Did something like that happen where after a while you just like built an exterior and you didn't break down in front of everyone because it became so frequent?
See, I became so emotional at that time, and these kids, both my children had never seen their father cry. And that moment onwards, they saw me crying every day, like, bawling away.
Yeah.
Like it was so bad that I couldn't even speak. I should just cry. So, these guys are wondering that, what's up with Papa? Like, what's wrong with him? Like, why is he grieving so much? And then I used to explain to them that, if you are lucky in your lifetime and you find someone who truly loves you and who's so devoted to you, then you will understand what I meant by it. Because otherwise, how will you understand? Now, you don't have that relationship now in your life with anyone.
Right.
But when you get to that point, and if you're blessed enough by God to have that relationship, it's unbelievable, because, you feel like, you're in bliss, you're the king of the world. When you have a doting wife, who's there at the door all the time, who's 24/7, with you in every moment, in every kind of up and down of life. It's just a different feeling. And there were times when I used to feel that, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, like, मैं इनकी जिंदगी खराब कर दूंगा ये दिन भर रो रहा के. And then this podcast came into our lives. In, after 4-5 months of my wife passing away. And again, it was his idea. And, I really thank my kids. I thank her for bringing them up in such a way that, they could come up with these ideas and do this. So it's that. And there was a moment when I used to think that, nobody should love anyone so much. Then when one of those people goes away, then it's really, really bad for the other person who's left behind. But then after that, I saw around me, a lot of my friend circle, people started having divorces, there were relationship issues. And then I realized that, I never even knew all this about my own friends, that they are going through such hard times in their own relationships with their own spouses. And then I realized that no, actually I was so blessed You know, your 22 साल जो है, I probably must have lived, 22 lifetimes with her in those 22 years. The kind of stuff we did, the kind of, outings we had, the kind of time spent together, the kind of laughter, fun. It was just wow.
I'm sure you guys, once your mother passed away, I'm sure the internal family became closer, much closer than ever before.
For sure.
Right? But there is also a culling, or like ऐसा भी होता है कि जब ऐसी कोई चीज होती है, जैसे ऐसा होता है जब हम कल बात कर रहे थे ना, आपने कहा आपके सर्कल में कौन है, मैंने कहा मेरे सर्कल में मेरा मैनेजर है जो मेरा दोस्त है, मेरी बहन है, मेरे पापा है, मम्मी है, दादी है, और सब भी बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग हैं, बट मैं उनको ये नहीं बोलूंगा कि जिनको मैं अपने इमीडिएट जान जितना ऐसे प्यार करूंगा सोचूंगा.
I mean, it was never like that. I never had any resentment. Like I mentioned earlier, कि मेरे को हमेशा लगता था कि ये क्या आके क्या बोल रहे हैं लोग मुझे, क्यों ज्ञान बांट रहे हैं मेरे को. रोज कोई आ जाता है, रोज 10 जन आते हैं, मेरे को बोलते हैं ऐसे कर लो, वैसे कर लो, ये कर लो, वो कर लो. And some of the things were very nasty, like I mentioned earlier. But I then at the end I decided that look, there's no point in कोई घर पे आ रहा है तो you can't not meet them. So I would meet everyone, but then I would listen to it in 1 year and let it out the other year. And just assume that जो भी आ रहा है वो एक अच्छे intention.
Because you knew your lived reality. You knew that
I
whatever
knew
they
that
say.
okay, whatever they say is not going to make a difference in terms of what. But that one thing about being the two choices that a lady Panditji gave me was that either you go the creative way or the destructive way. These are the only two choices you have. And thanks to my children, who really, really, they are in fact mothering me now. And they are like filling that void by they held my hand and they said let's do this, and we did it, and it's great.
ऐसा होता है कि in our family, so we always think that the father is the strongest, most muscular, provider. पापा होते हैं तो छत्र छाया होती है हमारे ऊपर एक,
छत के नीचे सो रहे हैं.
और बहुत सारे ऐसे इंसिडेंट्स आए where my sister is proven to be the strongest, where like I had such an emotionally debilitating heartbreak at some point that she was the one who held me together.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
she's younger, so I was like कि हाँ इसको क्या पता होगा, और उसका EQ मेरे से 10 गुना ऊपर है आज भी. मैं अभी भी like I'm very far behind in that.
But I'll tell you one thing. I always go back to after this incident, this set of incidents in our family. Both of us have turned a lot towards spirituality, and it's given us a lot of peace and solace.
Yeah.
It's taught us a lot also as to why are we here. Why do certain things happen. All those things. And one thing I realized that every time I go back to our ancient culture and I read, women in India are Shakti. As simple as that. Unki jo the threshold level that they have of bearing pain is far greater than men. That I can guarantee. I see the way my mother, who's 75 years old now, the way she's standing together and sticking all of us together. Like
she's so nice. She's
unreal at that age to just go relentless. 6 बजे सुबह उठ के she's making sure that everything is there. चाय, कॉफी, जो भी है, बच्चे दूध पी रहे हैं, जो भी है, whatever it is. She's at it, and we have staff. ऐसा हम लोगों को मतलब भगवान की दया से कोई कमी नहीं है. But she's at it 24/7. She's making sure that everyone is served food. She's waiting there at the table, and she's doing it 24/7 every day, even though she's unwell.
And she doesn't look tired.
And no man will do this. I can guarantee you that. कोई फादर ग्रैंडफादर आके खड़े होके बैठेगा नहीं दिन भर 24 घंटा बच्चों का. कहता है नर्चरिंग.
वो अगर 3 बाप बेटे दादा रहते हैं और तीनों छड़े होते हैं तो फिर वो घर में बैचलर पैड बन जाता है.
हाँ, exactly. Yeah. So see, man, and as per our entire whatever we've learned and whatever our culture is, I feel that the greatest gift that India has given to the world is the Indian family system. It's just wow, and usme the woman plays the most important role, I think.
Let me ask you a question again. You can cut this out if it's too blunt. जैसे इंडिया की सोसाइटी के अंदर there is a very sadly the society is very harsh. Like आप तो विडोवर हो, क्या कर रहे हो? आपको विडोवर का टैग मिलना शुरू हुआ है?
हाँ, so very often, so many times, but it doesn't affect me because it is what it is.
Yeah,
there's nothing I can do to change that. Right? I can't go around telling people that no, don't use this. This is a term that hurts me. It hurts. So I just let it pain till it stops paining.
And you like the reason I brought up women is because you also have your younger sister, right? Who's technically not on the podcast, but perhaps in many ways her eyes look much wiser than perhaps the three of us combined. Since she's the youngest, and mothers often have a love for the youngest child, then how did she deal with this? How did you help her deal with your mother's loss?
So she has a lot of talents that we both also don't have. She plays the piano. She's a graded pianist, and she also plays the violin a lot. So she has this habit of keeping herself busy whenever shit hits the fan,
Hmm.
and that's what she's been doing since day one. We haven't spent much time with her because she's at that age right now where she's also changing and she's not very emotionally available. So, and this thing was also like very shaking for her. But she's also seen
See, she's seen
relative.
it all. She's been through it all. But what I would say here is that, I found both my children to have matured overnight the day their mother passed away. The
Hmm.
way they have conducted themselves after that, especially, both of them. And my daughter, like I said again, women, I would say the Indian women are far superior to Indian men in terms of sahanshilta, in terms of dealing with stuff, with grief, etc.
Hmm.
They outpace us completely. This girl at the age of 13 lost her mother, and overnight I saw her maturing. And the way she takes care of us right now,
Hmm.
she'll like, make tea for me at 5:30 in the morning if I want, which my wife used to do earlier, it's that beautiful. She's just taken over
And
this
this
role.
is not like कि ये अब आजकल लड़कियां ऐसा नहीं करती क्योंकि ये एक मॉडर्न वैल्यू के साथ नहीं है compatible.
Fortunately, she has her mother's divinity
Yeah.
and her upbringing, so she's groomed in that way.
No, I think that really helps to have such a strong upbringing to be able to last through that. So now this podcast starts, right? And you're like a few episodes deep. The first guest comes in, and you're all over the place, perhaps nervous, because like since last night I've answered over 75 questions that he's asked me. Happy to answer more, but it just shows that there is an eagerness, a kind of an obsessiveness also to do this.
Yeah.
Now these new people, this first person, this first few set of guests come in. Those new episodes, what is going through your mind? Are you nervous? Are you like half excited, half let's just get it over with? I'm not sure if this is a good idea. Or do you dive into it full of excitement?
So initially, I was overwhelmed because I did not expect these many gadgets to be here. First of all, for the setup,
Gadgets.
and I had never seen this room so occupied.
I see.
So that was number one. Number two was I thought it wouldn't be a big deal because this was like all camera recorded. If we did like a bad thing, we could just cut it out. But still, it was a little. It was showing on my body language. Like the director could tell that I was nervous. I was stressed.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, but then as soon as the podcast started and we started going, luckily I caught the flow and it didn't feel like I was in that setting anymore. And the second podcast was even better on the first day. So
Hmm.
first day was great, but that's the problem because we did not expect all the other difficulties we'll have to deal with. Because our crew also told us that the two guests you had on the first day are the two ideal speakers you'll get on a podcast, which you'll rarely find. And I've seen that through the amount of.
What do you mean, idle speakers?
Ideal speakers in the sense like they know when to stop. They let you interrupt them to ask questions. Because there are some speakers that have come who
They just go on a rant.
Yeah, and it's really hard.
Was I going to rant?
No,
No, not at all. Not at all.
Now I'm questioning if I fucked it up or no.
This is your podcast now. It's the
Yeah.
role reversal. No, you're asking the questions. So
Yeah.
are we on a rant?
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, the reason I like hosting is because there is a sense of control.
Yeah.
And how to modulate people and how to make sure how to dive deeper and it's very selfish to be a host because you can like scratch all your curiosity.
True.
So so this happens. And now for you, Kunal, because you're slightly more public facing, आपने बताया पहले भी काफी social रहे हो, always been social, and you're perhaps used to meeting, if let me not use the word VIPs, but eminent personalities से आपका मिलना जुलना पहले से रहा है. So taking that from a business social context to now a semi-professional context where you're now essentially interviewing someone, what do you change about your approach?
So I try to keep it very, very casual usually. And like we were talking offline also, crack a few jokes, bring in some humor, make everyone, let their guard down, disarm them. This is the word that I picked up from our conversation last night. That, if you can disarm your guest, and, or whoever you're, talking to on your podcast, then it becomes a free flowing convo. And that's what we were looking at, because I mean, like we've done, I think now 70, 75 podcasts we've recorded. And we have rarely had like cuts now. Nowadays it's just a free-flowing convo. We just got into that chemistry. And the chemistry that we have also, it's like a father-son thing. So that two people interviewing one guest, it's a little complicated. But we've developed that chemistry that he knows, when to shut up and when to let his father in, and I know when to keep quiet and just keep my mouth shut for to let him flow with his questions and answers. So it came quite naturally to me because I was always meeting good people, smart people, intellectual people, I would say, and having great conversations with them. So it was sort of natural. Like I didn't feel any कि अरे ऐसा हो रहा है वैसा हो रहा है कि कैमरा के सामने में कैसे how do I look, and I didn't really matter to me. It's like जैसा हूँ मैं वैसा हूँ. If people like it, we'll continue. If they don't, we'll our family business तो है ही, वो तो कर ही रहे हैं हम लोग.
What was the first moment when something went viral? What was that definition of a viral thing for you?
So for me, viral was basically anything that
नहीं, first वो कि यार हम तो we made a dent. Something happened. We did something and the market responded.
That 4.1 million wala reel.
So yeah, that was Instagram. But for me, Instagram, I've seen a lot of the usual reels from people who have normal 400 follower accounts also blew up. So I wasn't that surprised. But on YouTube, the first shot that took up was from one of our earlier episodes from this lady named Dr. Mrinmay Bhushan,
Okay.
who told us about India's first bioterrorism case. And that one just took off to like 300-400K views. I know that's not too big a number, but for us, it's still a big deal. And when I read the comments, I understood that people actually didn't understand what the reel was about only. That's why it's gone so much. And this similar thing happened with another guest named Suzanne Burnett.
I know Suzanne.
I don't think I'm pronouncing her last name right, but her shot has now gone to 1 million views. And the same thing happened out there. Nobody actually understood what she's saying.
So people were just arguing in the comments.
Exactly.
कि क्या चल रहा है?
Which is a great way to...
Yeah.
Which is, we've realized later on also. Okay, so that happened, and now what are you trying to do with this podcast? Like, आप लोग क्या चाहते हो? Take 100 episodes, take a break?
So I see, like I said, it's something that is a diversion from the grief that we are going through, and we're still going through a lot. The grief doesn't subside. It's either stays stagnant or increases. It doesn't subside. So this is a very, very good way to divert our minds from what's happened. Like he said, his sister has used her music, her kathak, her singing, her violin, piano to she's just ingrained enclosed herself into that space so that she doesn't think about what happened with her mama. And similarly, I think that this kind of creative stuff that we're doing is keeping us out of it, because at work, if I go to my regular work every day, which I go to, those thoughts are always there in the background. But now had I gone home, my wife would have been there, khana, saath mein khate, ye karte, wo karte. Now it's sort of diverted with this. So I want to keep doing this, whether we make money or not is secondary. It doesn't even matter, because, we're not doing it for money. But yes, between us, we have a pact that if at all this podcast does make money, we would like to actually build a physical Gurukul, of actual ancient Gurukul in Pune, in the name of my wife. That's the purpose of, why we want to take this. And we just want to keep doing it, and in fact, the other day I was just joking with him that, I want to build a legacy of podcasters. I want my grandkids to be podcasters. I want my great grandkids to be podcasters. So, chalte rahe bas, talk about good stuff that's odd but relevant. मैं तो odd but relevant chalte rahe bas, just keep talking about odd topics. And it's great talking to guys like you. We learn so much.
Who's been the guest you most misunderstood, and when they came to your house, they were completely different?
That's a very tough question.
Misunderstood
everyone.
Misunderstood in what way?
Yeah, जैसे हम लोग क्या करते हैं, when we meet someone, before we meet someone, we rely on their public appearances.
Correct.
Sure.
कौन से videos हैं, कौन सी speeches हैं, कौन सी किताबें हैं.
Anything controversial, etc. You
and that's the stuff that generally gets the news.
Right.
Then you meet someone and they happen to be completely different, docile or wild in public life or private life.
So I would say there are many, but
what the ones you can say names without getting in trouble?
I would say that I form my own image of people, like you said, based on their parents and stuff, and I would say one of them would be Abhijit Chawda sir, because and I didn't misunderstand him in a bad way, because I thought that he was so intellectual and that he knows so much about physics, my one of my favorite subjects. He knows so much about history, he knows so much about geopolitics. And if he came for a podcast and we were unprepared, even like 1%, and he saw through that,
No, he's
Then
a very kind man. He isn't looking for that.
No, he's
exactly. But when he
Yeah.
came and he showed us, like, what kind of person he is and how um relaxing his presence made us feel,
Yeah.
and that how he was so humble.
He's also a very tall dude in real life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
big and he's a wonderful human being. He's so
Yeah.
soft-hearted.
Yeah.
Like, he came from Bombay and, in the evening he was leaving. So, we caught up for a drink at home, after the podcast.
Yeah.
And then I said, Kisa, why don't you stay over, go in the morning, na?
Huh.
So, why do you want to drive on the expressway in the night? He said, I'm not driving. I'm going by plane. So I said, ki, kaun sa plane hai? Because Pune, Bombay doesn't have a flight at that time in the evening. It has just one flight, I think, in the morning. How are you going? So he said, no. My wife, she doesn't like me to drive on the expressway. So I'm flying to Delhi from Pune, and then I'm taking a flight from Delhi to Bombay. So I was like, sir, you're a physicist, you're a man of science. Does this even make any logic? And he was just laughed it off and he said, Arey bhai, wife ka sunna padta hai. So he went off and he went to Delhi, and then in the morning courtesy, I messaged him at 6 o'clock, sir, have you reached home and all that? He's saying, I'm still at Delhi airport because my flight from Delhi to Bombay got delayed. So, it was like he was a fun guy. Like,
Yeah.
we had formed an image of him that, theoretical physicist,
Yeah.
he'll be a serious guy, he'll be only talking about, numbers and, all that.
I've hung out with him extensively after the podcast.
Yeah.
बहुत मजे आते हैं.
Bahut maja aaya. Like, I loved it. We had a drink
Yeah.
upstairs and we had a
Yeah.
lovely time with him.
Like, it's very rare for him. I don't think I've ever seen a podcast of him that is like on fun topics. Like, for example, we did a small podcast with him on the truth about physics movies.
Right.
So in that we spoke about movies like Interstellar, Tenet, and he made it very, very
He
funny.
made it a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Whenever someone says something which is publicly offensive, controversial, what is your reaction? How do you take that forward?
So the first thing I try to do is I try to if the guest is sort of, I judge the body language as much as I can, and I usually take a cut, or I say that, or I try to divert the conversation away. Just like you said, I try to either I try to dig deep into that and try to understand their reasoning of what they've said, why they've said, or mostly if they're too adamant, which is sometimes the case, then we just cut it out.
What I've been telling him is that, first of all, see, you're a platform that's providing, a space to people to come and talk. Right? You're going to have. I always believe that right wing and left wing are both birds of the same feather, or the both wings of the same bird.
Yeah, and the more extreme you
All
go,
right,
the more
you
similar
have-
they look.
Yeah, you have, like, the extreme right wing, you have the extreme left wing, and we want to be a platform that is open to both. Because I always believe that free speech should be heard by, free speech means listening to both sides. If you're going to only listen to the left, you're going to go down that path. If you're only going to listen to the right wing, you're always going to go to that. So I always tell my children also, just generally, listen to all sides of the story. Both sides are a must. And I think that's what the platform is meant for. And I would always say that, let the guest speak his or her mind. You don't need to agree with them. But you need to politely, if it's morally wrong, or you feel that it's challenging your morals, or it's communal or something, then you try and curb it in a very polite manner. And I would always then, after the episode ends or after we finish recording, talk to the guests and tell them that, look, this I feel we should edit it out. Do you mind if I edit it out? And then take their consent and do it. I would not just snip it away, and because then that person is going to come back and say, "Maine ye bola tha, to ye kyun kaat diya bhai?" So I would say, do it amicably. And there's always an amicable way of doing things, when you talk to the guest.
In my experience, the best conversations happen off the camera,
Absolutely.
before or after the podcast.
Yeah.
Has that been the case? And how scarred are you about knowing about the personal lives of such powerful men and women?
So this actually adds a lot to our solace of the grief. Because when you meet all these kind of people, like for example, I met you and I didn't know a lot of things about your own personal life and your
Yeah.
childhood. So similarly, there are so many people who have met and have learned about problems that
grief.
they have had,
Yeah.
and that sort of gives me solace, because like I said, nobody my age has sort of dealt with that. People that I know have dealt with similar stuff as me in terms of deaths. People who are older are probably more likely to have dealt with stuff like that. And they are obviously more emotionally mature, mostly, to tell me what to do.
Or emotionally deadened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Both ways.
Yeah.
either way can happen. But when I meet such big personalities, I used to tend to be very emotionally upright with them. I used to be very stiff. I used to be very conscious of what I'm saying and stuff. But when I get to know the person behind them and the struggles that they've been through to get to that level. It's like I'm continuously
Mhm.
playing a movie in my head, of what they're up to and how they got to that level. So that humbles me also a lot.
Mm.
And that also shows me that what all people have gone through that nobody knows. Only there's this photo of on Instagram that used to come on all these motivational pages
Yeah.
of this guy standing on top and he's juggling those bowling pins. Sorry, he's juggling glass plates, and they've shown the backstage drop of it where he's climbing those steps with bare feet, and the broken plates he's stepping on them, and there's blood everywhere. Nobody gets to see that, but they only see the juggling at the end.
Mm.
So that these kind of things have really moved me a lot throughout the
I
journey.
think, the more people you meet, the more you talk to them offline, during the podcast, people are always a little bit guarded, कि मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, क्या नहीं. But offline, before, after, we caught up for a drink last night, we
Yeah.
chatted and we opened up so much. And there, you come to know so much that, okay, that everyone suffers. In some form or the other, there is suffering. Life is not all rosy and all that. You Instagram hai. Nowadays, you open Instagram, everyone is a model. Even the dogs are models. Everyone is having a great life. Everyone is
Yeah.
like, wow. That sort of puts you in that direction that सबके तो मौज है, मेरी लगी पड़ी है यहाँ, मैं रो रहा हूँ कमरे में बैठ के. But then you realize that actually when you meet the people, that how much of suffering they've gone through.
Kunal, you're not politically correct at all.
Sorry?
You're not a politically correct individual.
I don't care.
Yeah, you're not. And I'm only saying this because, off camera, I'm very politically incorrect. On camera, I'm still, I was on Smita's podcast. People gave me a mouthful. You're being so diplomatic.
Yeah, I saw some of the comments.
Yeah, it's like, I was like, well, I'm sitting with such, first of all, I don't know enough. But me and him were exchanging a glance and laughing when he was saying today, nowadays, everyone on Instagram, because we still happen to be in a generation where we think that the ability to say the politically incorrect truth lies with the older generation.
Yeah.
हमारी generation में अगर मतलब if we were to bridge our gap, right, the 7-8 years that we have, if you go and say shit like this, then your entire 8 years के जितने बंदे हैं ना 8 साल जैसे 20 से लेकर 28 के वो सब आपको मतलब साइड कर देंगे.
Yeah.
Cancel culture.
कैंसिल
कर देंगे.
कैंसिल भी नहीं करेंगे मतलब कोल्डली आपको रिडिकुल करके साइड कर देंगे. तो इसलिए अभी भी there is a deep undercurrent of political correctness even within our own youth. So the only one who can get away with it, the only one who has a license is people older than us. क्योंकि हम बोल सकते हैं हाँ ये तो ignorant है, इनको मालूम नहीं है, पर वो सुनते भी उनकी हैं secretly. Because no one our age has the audacity to say what is wrong with our age.
But we have to understand the whole cycle as to why this has happened is because of bad parenting is number one. That family system जब टूट जाता है ना तो बच्चे जो है इस दिशा में चले जाते हैं where they want to be accepted by these kind of people,
right?
And they get accepted very easily
And
because
these
they're
are
looking for numbers.
Infectious bad ideas.
And it's what it is manifested into. In the US, we saw a show on TV. We just flipping channels, and we saw this show where there is this whole movement is manifested into trans-abled movement. So we were like, "Ye kya hai?" So we were watching the show. So they had these 3 guests on the show, and this Piers Morgan, that famous journalist, he was interviewing them, and he asked this guy that what do you mean by trans-abled? So he says, no, I identify. I always thought that I am disabled. So in the night, I got drunk and cut my arm off. And so he asks, but why? So he says, so I get the first parking the first parking slot in the mall for that disabled parking होता है ना अमेरिका में कि वो दरवाजे के मॉल के दरवाजे के ठीक सामने जो disabled spots are there. That was his reason. The second lady says that I always identify that I'm blind. I don't want to see what's happening on this planet. So I blinded myself with a screwdriver in the night. So I was like, ये सब हो रहा है, and if we are not able enough to tell them this is wrong,
yeah,
and try to not call a spade and be diplomatic and say okay let them do this, you're letting society commit suicide. आज हमारे घर में अगर किसी कोई सुसाइड करने जा रहा है तो क्या हमारा फर्ज नहीं है, हमारी धर्म नहीं है कि उसको रोके समझाएं? तो क्या इनको मरने दें ऐसे? How can you let your kids go in that direction? And it's become a mass movement in the US and it's coming to India.
You're so right. It's the family system.
Yeah.
Anyone who has strong male models and strong female models in their house need not look for validation from these movements outside.
Exactly.
Yeah, fuck.
It was so hard for me to process that people are cutting off their own limbs, blinding themselves and all, just to prove a point. And,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I was like, क्या हो रहा है यार? And why isn't anyone telling them this is wrong?
When Oddcast is at 16K subscribers now, 16, 17K.
Yeah, around that much.
Yeah. Have you guys stepped out in public together ever since?
So yeah, I barely go out of the house nowadays, but yeah, like we've been going for a little bit of hiking and all that. We went a little bit, but not much. Like
You haven't
publicly,
been gone to the markets. You haven't.
Oh,
Have you?
like
we
that much
went
outing
to a
we've done.
mall once in a while just for lunch, just family, just 3-4 of us.
Have you engaged in, like, do you respond to followers on DMs, something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
of course, of course.
What is that like? What do your fans want? What do they say? What's the general consensus?
Well, they haven't really said much about us yet, but they have said a lot about guests. There have been a lot of requests that please get so and so person, please get so and so person. I really liked your name. The Oddcast, like you said in the previous episode, like you wanted Dostcast to be like a replaceable face for podcast.
Hmm.
We are sort of getting there
Hmm.
because there are some people in the comments who say a fabulous Oddcast, one more Oddcast, please, with their so and so person.
Yeah, that's what happens with me as well. It's very good.
It's nice, like, to listen to read some comments. There are some good critique comments also, where people are criticizing us for the better.
Yeah.
That, hey guys, you could have done this more. Aisa karo, you should have not, there's a lot of valuable feedback that we get, and I like it. I enjoy reading the comments, engaging with them. I thank people that, somebody has said something nasty. I, replied to them saying that first line is that, thank you for watching our content, and, I hope you continue. We will try and do better. We understand where you're coming from. Essay, simple, I give them a reply. Please don't tell me the podcast should have 2 million subscribers.
Actually, I was going to say that. No.
I can't control that.
No. But apart from that, I think my dad is just there. That's a big thing, and he's not gone down the wrong path. Just stay on the right path. That's it. Yeah, that's good enough.
Are there certain things you expect from your father that आपको ये करना चाहिए, आपको ये नहीं करना चाहिए, आप ऐसे रहो, आप ऐसे ना रहो?
Just don't go down the wrong path, because nowadays the thing is that there are a lot of people waiting to pull you down, then
Okay.
actually push you up. Because one of the relatives who had come had said something very wise. He said that whenever something like this happens, not necessarily a death, but something bad happens to someone, and that person is in a lot of turmoil, whatever, financial, emotional, or health, or whatever,
Hmm.
then the rest of the people who he thought were his friends, not all of them necessarily, but some of them, चाहे खुद कितना कीचड़ में हो, वो खुद कीचड़ निकाल के उस पे फेंकेंगे, उसको डुबाने का है. So he's not given into that, and that's really good. I think just not giving into that is enough.
Have you seen him more as a human being and less as a father as time has gone on? Or do
For
you
sure.
still, or do you still feel like ऐसे होता है जैसे in India, the reels that go viral are like कि पापा बोलते नहीं है लेकिन वो प्यार करते हैं, and they just get like 1 million views, like millions of shares, like what the hell is happening? What I find similar in your relationship with your father and mine with mine is our relationships are very over communicative, where we openly express our love for each other, and like you both openly talk about ये मेरा बेटा है, ये मेरे पापा है, हम ऐसे रहते हैं, वैसे रहते हैं. You talk about as an us versus उन reels में दिखाते हैं मैं हूं और वो एक बाप है, एक different entity है. So I never related with it, but some people do, because some people really have that. So throughout this whole process, how have you humanized him? Have you perhaps forgiven him for certain things that you want? Because I remember when you were a teenager, you resent your parents a lot for no reason at all.
Yeah,
Because you're growing up and आप बदल रहे हो, आपको समाज बेहतर लगता है, माँ बाप बुरे लगते हैं, आपको रोकते हैं, टोकते हैं, आपको लगता है इनको क्या पता है, मुझे पता है, मुझे पता है. So from that standpoint, have there been things where you've accepted that he's a human being and you've forgiven him? Because sometimes
for sure.
kids don't forgive their parents
Yeah,
all the way till their 60s, 70s.
For sure. But honestly speaking, and I've seen a lot of these posts on Instagram also,
Yeah.
that like, if you want to grow in life, then first thing you have to do is forgive your parents.
Yeah.
And for many years, I was wondering, what that means. I'm still wondering what that means, by
Yeah.
the way, because there's nothing much that at least my mom is not around anymore, but my dad has done that I need to forgive him.
Yeah.
Of course, he has his
Which
own.
means you've been blessed. You've had great parents.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's great.
Well, this has been a very illuminating session of getting to know both of you in perhaps a very candid way possible. अच्छा लगा कि दो बाप बेटे को देखिए कि क्या उनके आपसी वो है. I will say that I would say It's been 24 hours almost since I've been here. 20 hours since I've been here. It's been a whirlwind of conversations, some nice drinks, thanks to you. And tons of great food, thanks to your mother, who is a very kind soul. And your questions about podcasting, I hope I answer to the best of my ability. And I just want to say that it is a privilege to be here. It is very much like an experience, like
It's
an
our
immersion.
privilege too that you're here.
Thank you. And it's been like an immersion in your world, which is far more meaningful than taking 2 hours out of your day to do an appearance and then go on about your way. It is truly like a mini retreat what you've built here. And it's very welcoming, and you guys are awesome. And since you are now friends with many of my friends, we are also friends. And I hope to see you again very shortly for
sure.
discovering Pune's hinted land hikes, which I've completely missed because TripAdvisor is being a bitch. So, yeah, thank you for your time and thank you for doing this.
But I'm going to take you up on that now, because I've shown you a lot of our hiking, trekking videos and the extreme stuff we do.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure you do it. Huh?
No, 100%. I will.
I'm going to pull you in over here and make you do all that.
Dude, the 3-hour journey was a blast because I was playing businessman on the phone, 2 SIM cards, both on, calling people like, yeah. No time I was here.
Good. I'm glad. And like I said, like I tell everyone who comes here, this is your home. This is your show. Help us and keep coming. Anytime you're in Pune, this is your first time to Pune, I want to see you coming often.
Yeah.
And come during the hiking, trekking season, which is from June till Jan. And we'll take you out to some fabulous places.
And I hope Pune gets many more square yard bungalows, and the world realizes the value of bungalows and mansions and moves to this old style of living, because it is very much like home, and to be in your home, it's a privilege. And I hope that for the people who have come from my channel, whenever this comes out and I share this, please subscribe to this podcast. It's a great podcast. I think even then they're going to have a bank of 3,500 episodes minimum.
Oh, please, not so many.
So many more are coming out. And I wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your time.